In 1988, the Golden Girls shot a scene that caused so much trouble that NBC executives got scared. It had mud masks, a black family, and 13 minutes that people would watch over and over again for decades. At the time, Betty White said one line that didn't seem mean, but 32 years later, the whole episode was taken down by streaming sites. They got rid of it totally. What began as a joke turned into a big problem across the country. Yes, black writers did defend it, but the damage was already done. Here's what really took place. NBC held a fall preview show at their offices in Burbank in August 1984. The plan was to show off their future shows, but something bad happened instead. Selma Diamond from Night Court and Doris Roberts from Remington Steele spoke out about the new crime show Miami Vice. Selma heard the title wrong and said Miami Nice. Instead of telling her she was wrong, the two of them went with it. They mixed it up and made a comedy piece about older women in Miami who dance, show off their mink coats, and relax on the beach. While most people in the room laughed, there was one man who was thinking. A senior vice president at NBC named Warren Littlefield saw more. In the end, he remembered that these middle-aged women made the stage shine. It hit hard when they were funny and when they were there. He said it was one of the luckiest mistakes in the history of TV. There was a spark in that joke that would grow into the Golden Girls. But there was something else. CEO of NBC Brandon Tartikoff had always loved the 1953 movie How to Marry a Millionaire. It stars Marilyn Monroe, Betty Grable, and Lauren Bacall as three beautiful women in New York who were looking for rich boys to marry. That made Tartikoff wonder if something like that could work for TV. The idea didn't work at first. Having women look for love didn't seem to fit with the feminism movement of the 1980s. After that, Tartikoff went to see his aunt. Everything changed after that stay. He saw that the show didn't have to be about girls. Something like his aunt and her friends living together could be the subject. Still, not even all of Tartikoff's co-workers knew what was going on. Later, Warren Littlefield said he wasn't sure how important that Monroe link really was. That or Tartikoff may have kept it to himself. In any case, the Monroe-inspired idea met the nice comedy spark from Miami and things began to take shape. That's when directors Tony Thomas and Paul Younger-Witt brought the idea to Susan Harris at that point. She didn't want to go back to TV at first. She had made Soap and Benson and she was kind of retired. That being said, she didn't think twice when her husband Paul suggested that older people live in Miami. Yes, of course, she said. But they did not agree from the start. NBC was looking for women in their 40s. Harris thought of women in their 70s. Harris thought of older as having stories, real-life experience, and real humor, not just punchlines. It was her wish to write about people who had interesting things to say. It was a brave thought. Not many TV shows were geared towards that age group, but Harris saw it clearly. Littlefield read her story when she turned it in and gave it the go-ahead right away, even though the women were 20 years older than what NBC had asked for. The cast looked a little different when the pilot was shot on April 17, 1985. Sophia, Blanche, Rose, and Dorothy weren't the only ones there. Chico was there. Chocolate, played by Charles Levin, was a gay houseboy who lived with and cooked for the women. He was actually suggested by the network. It had only been 4 years since NBC got in trouble for a gay character on Love, Sydney. This time though, they wanted Coco to be honest and sure of herself, not shy. Coco was meant to be a main character at first, and Levin had already played gay parts. But his parts were the first ones cut when the pilot got too long. At the same time, Sophia, played by Estelle Getty, was only supposed to show up sometimes. She did so well with the crowd though that producers made her a regular. Sophia took Coco's place after he was cut. That small change changed TV for good. Something else is crazy. Sophia, who was played by Estelle Getty, was 79 years old, but B. Arthur, who played her daughter Dorothy, was much younger. He came into the world in July 1923. In May 1922, Arthur was born. His age was 62. Arthur was 63 years old. But Getty looked 17 years older every day because she wore heavy makeup, thick glasses, and a white wig. It took more than an hour to change her. Because of her role in Torch Song Trilogy, she was the first of the 4 main group members. Michael Eisner, the CEO of Disney, even said she was the spark that changed 3 women into girls. They were both 68 years old when the show stopped in 1992. Their parts were switched over the whole thing. She almost wasn't Rose Becky White. She came in to try out for Blanche. That made sense. She had just finished being on the Mary Tyler Moore Show as the man-hungry Sue Ann Nivens. But director Jay Sandrich believed it was too much like the first one. He told her that if she played another nymphomaniac in the neighborhood, everyone would think it was Sue Ann again. She was told to read for Rose. White wasn't pleased. She said her heart hurt. She did not understand the person. That being said, Rue McClanahan wasn't doing well as Rose either. After that they switched. McClanahan did a great job as Blanche in the reading. All of a sudden it worked. All of a sudden it worked. Rose was honest and nice. She would call animal control if you told her I could eat a horse. White later said that McClanahan took Blanche out into space farther than Blanche could have gone on her own. But there was one more casting change that could have changed the course of history. Elaine Stritch, a Broadway star, tried out for the role of Dorothy. Sue Harris didn't seem to like her from the start. Stritch asked if she could change some of the conversation. He told her she could only change the grammar. Stritch didn't pay attention. As a joke, she used the F-bomb. Hey Ying, don't forget the hors d'oeuvres. A few executives laughed. It wasn't Harris. After the show, Stritch joked that she missed her chance to win $35,000 or $50,000. And this show would make a lot of money when it was shown all over the world. The people in charge said they had always wanted B. Arthur. Stritch didn't even read the book. McClanahan also had to fight for her part, but not to get it. She had to fight to do it her way. It was clear that Blanche was from the South, even more so than Blanche Dubois. But director Jay Sandrich stopped her when she tried to use the voice in the pilot. I don't want to hear a Southern accent, he said. He made her use the voice she normally has in Oklahoma. A new director took over when the show was picked up. McClanahan asked the producers to find a middle ground. She did not use a real Southern drawl. Instead, she made it sound more dramatic, like Mae West with a touch of Georgia charm. Anna Pearl, her mother's cousin, tried to sound classy by mixing English and Southern. This made her crazy. McClanahan told her that Blanche made up this voice because she liked it. That was the only way anyone else in the world could talk. No one saw The Golden Girls coming when it first aired on September 14, 1985. That night, about 21.5 million homes watched. It got a 25 rating and a 43 share. To give you an idea, that was the best debut for a network show in the last 2 years. It did even better than The Cosby Show, which was already a huge hit. Right away, a show with 4 older women on it went straight to the top of the Nielsen ratings, which was something Hollywood didn't think would work. Not only did the show break records, it also broke long-held views. Since Chico and the Man in 1974, NBC hadn't seen a comedy start off like this. That was more than 10 years ago. No one thought that a comedy about old people could even come close to that. However, The Golden Girls not only matched it, it beat it. In the end, NBC got the top 4 spots in the numbers that week. It was so good that it won 11 of the top 15 shows. NBC also won for the 16th time in 17 weeks that week. All of a sudden, the network could not be stopped. NBC was scared behind the scenes. Really scared. It was set to air on Saturday night, which TV experts call the death slot. Most people, especially those between the ages of 18 and 49 who marketers cared about the most, weren't even home. On Saturday nights, reruns or cheap filler shows were usually shown. Executives thought this was where shows died, and they were about to start something very different. There are 4 older women who live together and joke around and talk about real-life problems. That worked in a way that changed TV forever, even though no one thought it would. Saturday nights didn't just get by for the Golden Girls, they owned them. It became the most important show on NBC's weekend schedule. It showed that smart, well-written shows could always get a lot of viewers. Today, networks still don't show debuts on Saturday nights, but this one show changed everything and made TV history. Then there were a lot of awards. There were 68 Emmy bids for The Golden Girls over its 7 seasons, and the show won 11. What really stood out, though, was something very rare. Each of the 4 lead actresses got an Emmy. All in the Family, Will and Grace, and Schitt's Creek are the only other shows in history to do that. But The Golden Girls did it when all 4 of their stars were in the same group. She won first place in 1986. In 1987, Rue McClanahan came after him. It was won by both B. Arthur and Estelle Getty in 1988. It wasn't a random clean sweep. It showed that these women were more than just funny. They were some of the best in the game. The Golden Girls was known for its biting humor and brave stories, but an episode from 1988 caused a huge trouble that no one saw coming. It was episode 23 of season 3, and it was called Mixed Blessings. In the March 19th episode, Rose and Blanche walked into the kitchen wearing dark brown mud masks. At that point, the show seemed like any other. At that very moment, Dorothy's son was presenting his black fiancée, Lorraine, and her family. Lorraine's mother thought Rose and Blanche were Michael's parents because she wasn't wearing her glasses. She thought he was black. Rose spoke right away. "We have mud on our faces, we're not really black." She said it in the awkward and honest way she always does. It was a joke about not knowing, not about race. People at the time thought it was a smart twist that played on social awkwardness instead of blackface. But decades later, that one scene would cause a huge stir across the country. During the height of the Black Lives Matter movement in June 2020, Hulu quietly took the show down from its site. There was neither a warning nor an answer. Just left. A lot of people in Hollywood were upset about it. What some people called the purge of blackface. Episodes of 30 Rock, Community, The Office, and Scrubs were all taken away. But this one felt different. They weren't dressing up as black people. It looked like mud. It wasn't a joke, it was funny. Protesters wanted justice for George Floyd and bigger changes to the system as a whole. In response, streaming services deleted comedies. It seemed like a stunt to a lot of people who watched. The show had been out for a long time. Why now? Why do this? They didn't expect the reaction though. It came quickly and loudly. Of the people they thought they were guarding, people of color who write and review books spoke out in support of the show. Foxane Gay said it was strange, pointless, and stupid. She said it didn't make sense to get rid of the episode. It got a lot of attention when Amani Gandhi said that Dorothy, Rose, Sophia, and Blanche are the nicest white women on TV. She is Erica Williams.
Simon said it all in a few words. How on earth does Stop Killing Us sound like episodes of Please Remove from Golden Girls? These women weren't standing up for old jokes. It was made clear that getting rid of this material wouldn't help the real problem. It didn't make things better. Putting on the act that I told you 32 years ago made things worse. The trouble was comedy from 2 years ago. Even stranger is the fact that Mixed Blessings was one of the most forward-thinking episodes of the show. It was about a white man who was 23 years old getting married to a black woman who was 44 years old and pregnant. In the late 1980s, that was a strange thing to see on TV. The show dealt with racism, age differences, and family problems, and it ended with love, support, and compromise. The mums on both sides agreed in the end to support the marriage. That was very different for a sitcom from the Reagan years. It didn't shy away from sad parts in the show. Sophia asked in one scene if the rumors about how hot black guys are were true. In the middle of a talk over cheesecake in the kitchen, an awkward moment was played. The line was shown on national TV without being blocked. The show was very brave. Blanche then showed up. She quickly replied yes, proving the stereotype right away. Then just as quickly she tried to change her mind. But the harm was already done. That moment showed something more profound. Some views were not questioned, even on a show with characters who were supposed to be progressive and enlightened. Trudy, one of Lorraine's sisters, spoke up when Dorothy tried to shut down the stereotype, which made things even more difficult. She smiled and said, "Call it what you want. I'm just glad it's true." A lot of people were shocked by that one line. It wasn't a game, it made the bad stereotype stronger. It added to the old idea that black men were nothing more than sexual objects. Today we call that myth the Mandingoist stereotype. It comes from slavery and making people less human. Dorothy stepped in to stop the talk. It was clear that what she said was wrong, but it didn't stick. The others laughed, moved on, or didn't care about it. Someone could have good goals but still fail. This was a great example of that. They didn't mean to hurt, but they also didn't fix it. Since then, that scene has been used to show how TV in the 1980s tried to be progressive when it came to race, but often lacked the depth to really work. A lot of people laughed at B.O. Arthur and Betty White on The Golden Girls, but things weren't so great behind the scenes. You see, B didn't just hate Betty, she also needed her. That's what her son Matthew Sachs said. He thought his mom chose Betty as a way to deal with her feelings. She thought it was fun to have someone to be mad at, but she didn't know it. And that someone was Betty White for 7 full seasons. From 1985 to 1992. She knew it too, Betty.
She said in an interview in 2011 that B didn't really like me, and even found my happy mood annoying. Betty said, "If I was happy, she'd get mad sometimes." That clash of personalities caused stress every day. B, who liked things to be serious and focused, seemed to dislike Betty's happy energy. It wasn't just personal, it turned into a way for B to deal with things. She stayed sharp because she had an enemy, she needed the conflict to stay locked in. But their disagreement wasn't just about feelings. It was also about work. The way B and Betty worked was very different. B came from town hall. Every day she was shooting was like a play for her. Between takes, she stayed in character because she thought actresses should stay quiet, focused, and ready. Betty was the exact opposite. She loved talking with the crowd, which kept things fun and made people laugh. It made her feel better and worked for her. But for B, it was a mess, what her son said about it. It drove her crazy. B thought it was rude and took her attention away. Betty thought it would be fun and a way to connect with her friends. Both were good at what they did, but they didn't want to change the way they did things. Then something happened that made things worse. At the first Emmy Awards after The Golden Girls came out in 1986, all four of the stars were up for Best Lead Actress in a Comedy Series. Betty White was the only one who won. Everything changed that night. B was very angry. She thought he was rude. Rue McClanahan says that B used a bad word with Betty behind the scenes. Why? Because B believed she was the better performer. She was good at being on stage, had trained in acting, and had worked hard for years. She thought Betty was just a TV star and a lucky winner on a game show. It hurt a lot to win that Emmy, and even though she won her own Emmy 2 years later, the hurt didn't go away. It was Betty who won first. It was important. B became more and more angry with the show and with Betty as the seasons went on. She didn't like the jokes about how Dorothy looked. Even though the other women laughed off jokes about them, B felt like she was being attacked. She is tall, has a deep voice, and doesn't have much sex appeal. It's too personal for these jokes. I thought they were making fun of her, not just a figure. She felt the writing was getting sluggish and too focused on funny body language. That's what she called Dorothy bashing, and it got to be too much for her. It was no longer fun. She wasn't happy with the work. And her fight with Betty was still going strong, so it all got too much. It was clear that the Golden Girls couldn't go on without B after she left the show after 7 seasons. The show went on thanks to her dry wit. The group lost its edge without it. How close they used to be is what makes their story so sad. In the beginning they shared a car to get to work. Betty had to go to lunch with B. They were nice and even warm. That didn't last though. They never got together to figure things out. Things got more tense. It got quieter over time. It got too far between them. American TV took a big risk in the late 1980s and early 1990s. When it added Clayton Hollingsworth, the Golden Girls, which is known for its humor and heart, went into controversial ground. His name was Blanche, and he was gay. That wasn't all though. He planned to marry Doug, his partner. The plot wasn't just a filler. The story was split into 2 parts. One in season 4 and the other in season 6. Laws in the US didn't allow same-sex weddings at the time. It was shocking to see a gay wedding on primetime TV, especially in America, which is very traditional. Blanche didn't mind that Clayton was gay at first, as long as he didn't tell anyone. She got scared when he said he was going to have a wedding to make them official. What would the people next door say? What would it look like? Fear and love for her brother were at odds with each other. Sophia, not Blanche, made the emotional shift. Sophia said something easy that everyone will remember when she was 80 years old. Everybody wants to spend their golden years with someone, and they should all be able to. It was truthful. It was nice. It aired many years before most people were ready to hear it. That's what made it important. Then there was February 17, 1990. The Golden Girls ran for 72 hours that night. The show began with a letter. Rose learned that another person may have given her HIV during a blood exchange 6 years ago. She had to get checked out and then wait 3 whole days for the results. It was only the second comedy to talk about AIDS at the time, even though it had already killed more than 120,000 people in the US. 40% of HIV cases around the world were women. But the media barely talked about them. This show didn't stay away from fear. It didn't hide anything. But it didn't say who was to blame either. Blanche had the most powerful line. She told Rose that AIDS is not a sickness for bad people. People are not being punished by God for their sins. Insight and shame were both cut through by that line. Most people who watched didn't know that the story was very personal behind the scenes. A partner of one of the show's writers was dying of AIDS. A mother of one of the writers had a similar blood scare. The episode was true because the pain was real, but the Golden Girls wasn't just about being social. People also had wrong ideas about what women over 50 should be like. Blanche Devereaux was in charge of the group. Blanche slept with 165 different men over the course of 180 shows. It wasn't a game, it was a sentence. It was thought that older women on TV in the 1980s would be quiet, humble, and not sexual at all. Blanche said no to all of that. Now for the twist. When the show started, she was only 52 years old. It was okay to talk about protection, safe sex, and desire on the show. One moment that stood out was when the women were ashamed as they bought condoms. Blanche didn't move. She told them they were doing the right thing by society and morals. Being sure of herself gave older women something very special: permission. Freedom to still want things, to still be in charge, and not to feel bad about it. At a time when getting older meant becoming invisible, the Golden Girls made a splash. She also lit one, but she did it in a different way. Stan gave up on her after 38 years of marriage and married a flight attendant. He didn't even tell her in person. It was done by a lawyer on the phone. That deception hurt a lot, and it wasn't made up. It was based on real stories of women going through divorce in the 1980s. Dorothy didn't just cry and move on. She fought. She went back to work full-time. Her age made people treat her badly. It was hard for her to find steady work. She worked as a replacement teacher, a night school teacher, and even as a writer for kids' TV shows. She didn't give up though. When she finally found a reason to go to school, she chose it over money. That choice between love and money showed that women over 50 could still start new jobs. She didn't disappear. You could start over no matter how old you were or what was going on. The show kept going. It dealt with health problems for women long before anyone else did. Blanche went through menopause in season 2. It was awkward, it made me feel things, and it was real. One of the first times on TV that menopause was talked about freely. The show didn't end with hot flashes though. It showed how menopause changed relationships, sex, and who you were. Later, the show talked about chronic fatigue syndrome, breast cancer, and other topics. Dorothy's story of having chronic tiredness was especially moving. Doctors didn't think she was sick. They kicked her out. A lot of women at the time could relate to what that story was about. The writers looked things up. Docs and real people were talked to. They used those sounds in the script as well. In this way, the Golden Girls brought problems to light that had been hidden. Some things were thought to be too private, embarrassing, or hard to explain on TV. But these women didn't find them too hard. And by telling those stories, the show gave other people the chance to tell theirs. There was no plan for the Golden Girls to work. TV didn't want to show a program about 4 women over 50. It worked though, and it went on to become one of the most famous TV shows ever. It was named No. 54 on TV Guide's list of the 60 best shows of all time in 2013. After a year, the Writers Guild ranked it as the 69th best written TV show out of 101. That was strange on its own. The show didn't end there though. There were 68 nominations for it and 11 wins in the 7 years it ran from 1985 to 1992. Bea Arthur, Betty White, Rue McClanahan, and Estelle Getty were all up for Emmys for their major roles. That has only been done by 2 other shows in history. The praise didn't go away over time. Variety put it even higher on its list of the 100 best TV shows of all time in 2023, on November 18th. That's a big jump. It means that people are still talking about the show. Even though it's over, it keeps moving up those lists. They are still studying it. People who write still learn from it. Fans old and new still love it. That's the point. It didn't really go away. Streaming has given the Golden Girls a second chance at life. On sites like Hulu, new fans, some of whom were born after 1992, are finding it. The Associated Press says that young people in their 20s love watching a show about women in their 50s and 60s. The show still made me think about things like getting older, relationships, death, sexuality, and being alone. The jokes themselves feel new. Characters that are old enough to be their grandparents make millennials and Gen Z watchers laugh and cry. Women going through menopause, retirement, and taking care of older people are all talked about on the show, but it is warm, honest, and funny. That's the reason it works. It's not just a US thing either. People from all over the world are also watching. In Spain, Russia, and the Philippines, the show has been turned into movies. That wide of a reach shows that there is something bigger going on. Love, loss, laughter, and loyalty are all themes in the Golden Girls that are universal. They don't belong to one country or age. They are people.